It's the JJYP podcast.
We have a very special guest today, Charlotte Velasquez. Did I get that right?
You did. That's
Hell
perfect.
yeah. Thank you so much for coming over.
Josh, thank you so much for having me. I am excited. I am happy.
This is going to be cool because I don't know you very well. And so this is an opportunity. So far, the people that I've had on, I've known for a minute. And so this is going to be a new experience for me, which is kind of cool. You know what I mean? But I really do appreciate coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Now, right off the bat, I just want to point out one of the coolest things about you. And there are many things, but one of the coolest things about you is you are a helicopter mechanic.
I am.
That is so badass, dude.
Thank you so much.
Like, that is so badass. Like, it's one thing to see a chick in a truck, but you're working on helicopters, man. That is so cool.
Thank you. And actually, I guess one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do that as my career or whatever is my dad taught me all about cars growing up, right? I was always the one just holding the flashlight, helping him change the brakes, change the oils and all of this stuff. And I was like, yeah, this might be useful when I'm an adult, when I own a car and everything like that. But I was just so, I guess, interested in aviation and becoming a pilot and doing all of this other stuff. And I was like, the closest I can get, the better, right? And I was like, what better way than to know my vehicle or my vessel, like one-on-one.
So now that you're changing oil on helicopters, do you want a helicopter now? Is that where that's going?
Well, I couldn't afford one.
That would still be pretty sweet, though.
That would be pretty sweet.
Imagine
yes.
parking that thing at the McDonald's. You know what I'm saying?
I know it.
Get out. I'd like a double cheeseburger, please. They'd probably just give it to you for free.
I'm
just
sure.
in the fact that you showed up in your own helicopter. So how long have you been doing that?
7 years now.
7 years. And we won't say what branch of the military you're in because I do want to ask you about your experience in the military. I don't want anything to come back and bite you in the ass. But so 7 years, how much longer do you have?
Currently, I have about 4 years left on this contract. So I'll be at 11 years of service whenever I finish on this contract. However, I think that I'm going to be a lifer. I have a lot of youth ahead of me. I have a lot of enthusiasm for my job and what I do and the type of people that I interact with, the places that I get to go. And so I want to continue this for as long as possible, through retirement, I'm sure.
How many women are in this position?
A handful, maybe. Yeah, a handful, maybe. I only have one other. No, I'm sorry. There's so few of us. There's 2 other girls that I work with that are also helicopter mechanics. There's not a lot. You have a lot of people that are, pilots, and that's awesome. And you have people that are essentially like helicopter electricians, and you have a bunch of women in that field. But like when it comes down to just like getting your hands dirty, not a lot of people want to do that. And so it is very, very, very few. I'd say I can count on 2 of my hands. I
mean, when you wake up in the morning and you put the aviators on, do you feel like a badass? Is it like a Top Gun moment? Do you listen to the Top Gun soundtrack on your way to work every day?
Oh, this is so bad. I've never seen Top Gun. However, okay. I know.
Well,
what
thanks
you
for listening to the Just Josh and Your podcast. That was fun.
Oh, we're just joshing.
You haven't seen Top Gun?
I haven't.
What is going on here?
And I also didn't watch Black Hawk Down until after being in this job for 4 or 5 years, wow. Right? I'm one of those people. I have not seen
that's okay.
a lot of
we
movies, and that's okay.
Have you seen Back to the Future?
I have.
Okay, then we're good then.
Yeah.
As long as you've seen Back to the Future.
Thanks.
Yeah, free pass.
Okay, thanks.
But you should watch Top Gun. I mean, they're not flying helicopters, but it's still pretty badass, and it's got Tommy Cruise in it.
Such a babe.
You like Tom Cruise?
Smoke show, 100%.
He's aged pretty well.
He has.
You know, when you look at some of the co-stars he's been with, like the hot chickadees, and then
Yeah.
what they look like today, you're like, whoa.
Yeah,
And then
I
you look
want
at
to. I
Tom
want to know
Cruise.
what his skincare routine is, or something, or
Well,
genetics, maybe. I
It's
don't
that
know.
Scientology magic that he's working on there. Maybe that's the secret.
I hope not,
Maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's Scientology.
or maybe it's Maybelline. You know,
Yeah, it
we've
could
got
be.
everybody wearing makeup nowadays.
It could
anyway.
be Maybelline. That
It
is
could
true.
be.
That is, look, I'm sure you're used to it by now, but you just don't see a lot of women. And you're petite and you're cute and you seem very well, girly. You know what I mean? Like you're a girl. But I mean you obviously have that persona. You can totally hang with the guys, but you know, when you said that, it kind of just, I was like, whoa, because I didn't see that coming. So I thought that was just so freaking badass.
I think that, you know, I just haven't really, maybe I'm just not, like, I don't share that part of my life, I guess, with so many people, because at the end of the day, I'm just like, hey, you know what? This is my job. This is second to me, to, I guess, like my primary job and what I do every single day, right? Like every day is going to look different. And it's not every single day that I get to work on a helicopter. It's not every single day I get to fly in a helicopter. You know, we have so many other obligations.
Sure.
I'd say that it kind of gets a little lost in what I want to talk about. You know, when I'm coming home and when I'm meeting new people, you know, I want you to know me as like, hey, like, this is my personality, you know, this is who I am. When you get to interact with me, this is not the person that I am really at work, if that makes sense.
Sure. No,
you know,
absolutely.
because it is still a profession. It is still hopefully a long-term career for me. But there's a lot more to life than your 9 to 5.
Sure. No, absolutely. But a lot of people don't, you know, go get to work on freaking awesome helicopters from 9 to 5. So it is a little different there. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be able to compete with the mailman.
Well, I almost just feel
he's got nothing to talk about.
I think maybe I almost feel like embarrassed sometimes because it's kind of hard to accept that type of attention. You know what I mean? Like,
so you don't like the attention.
Oh, no, I love attention.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
I love attention. Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Well, then I would think you'd start off with that. Where's the tattoo of the helicopter, man? I mean, that you got to start advertising this stuff.
No way.
So how has that been working with I mean, predominantly male dudes working with you? How you feel like you've been treated equally? Have you felt like there's any differentiation there, or is all is fair in love and war?
I think with what I do specifically, it's pretty equal, right? However, you know, I do have a close friend who has been in this industry a lot longer than I have and does pretty much the exact same job that I do. Right, who has experienced, I wouldn't say discrimination. However, it's just like, you know, like you said, you don't generally see women like us doing these types of jobs.
Right.
Right. So you don't see, you know, small girly girls being mechanics, especially with heavy equipment. And so I have a story for you actually. Okay. So I have experience in my job. You know, I've been doing the same damn thing for years and years and years and years.
You poor thing.
I know. But I have a colleague who has been to the same places that I have been, who has done the same jobs that I have been, who has the same job experience that I do have. However, this person is a lot more outspoken with their abilities and with their experience. So, you know, they're one of the type of people that comes in and it's like, hey, I am so good at this. I know everything about this. You know, if you're looking for somebody with answers, I'm your man, right? And I would say that I'm just not outspoken in that way to where I let my performance speak for itself. Like, I don't have to tell people I'm good at my job. I don't have to do all of this stuff. I actually was in this situation where I was in a an essentially like a management position.
Okay.
Right. And I had people who were trying to coordinate some things, and they kind of needed my opinion just for the sake of being able to coordinate this and what works the best for the entire picture. Right. So they wanted my input. So I gave them my input, and I wouldn't say that they didn't believe me. However, they took it upon themselves to go and seek guidance from this other person who, like I said, we have, the exact same amount of time in service, the exact same amount of time in our job experiences. And I have what I would consider more experience than this person, just because I was in a role where I was able to essentially quantify their experience at one point and be able to see that and everything, which people don't do that on a normal basis. But they asked his opinion, and he pretty much told them what I said verbatim. And I was just sitting there like, okay, he said it, I said it. And then they again asked somebody else's opinion, and he said the same thing that I said. And I think that because it came from people that are more outspoken and people who trust just based off of their, I wouldn't say personality, but their outward appearance of knowing their shit, right? They trusted their word over mine. And I tried to like tell them like, hey, like this is something that I've said before, this is the exact same thing that I was telling you, right? Like, and I just feel like we don't get enough credit.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's the same thing as, a car mechanic. You take your car down to a shop and you're like, hey, there's these men or whatever that generally would be working on your cars, and you see a woman and she happens to be a mechanic. My thought even, and maybe I'm awful for saying this, is that I'm going to probably assume that she's a receptionist.
No, I mean, look, and I think a lot of people, without being malicious, would innocently make that judgment call. I mean, when you told me you were in the military, that was the last thing that I thought that you were doing. And I also want to say thank you for your service, by the way. Because I don't think it would be easy, especially in the political. It doesn't matter Republican or Democrat. I think it's hard for you guys. You guys are always the topic of almost every debate. The military. I particularly, just my opinion, don't think you guys are treated all that well. In the experience that I've had in talking to other service members, I feel like you guys deserve so much more than what you're given, just because you're our brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? On the front line. You're our friends and family. And sometimes I feel like they kind of don't hold, they almost like you're expendable to a certain extent.
Right. I think sometimes they forget that, like, hey, we're people too. We may be trained to become like machines or to work like machines and to do things as we are programmed to and as we're told and everything like that. But at the end of the day, we're still people.
Right.
And, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate that.
Well, we can't do it without you guys. Your willingness to go and serve. I mean, I couldn't do it. I don't think I could do it. I'm just too much of a pussy. I don't like to run. The only thing I'll run for is a basketball, and half the time I get yelled at for that too. So I just think anytime I see, a service member, I know kind of living in a community where there are a lot of military, it's funny how that persona changes, because where I come from, when you see a service member, you go up and, hey, thank you for your service. Like, it's few and far between, whereas they're all over here. And
right. Everybody, you never know if
like
somebody is,
right.
and that's just,
And it's a little desensitized.
Sure. Especially here, you've got a lot of retired military here. You've got a lot of active members and everything like that. And I think it's just like, oh, well, it's just another one of my neighbors or just another one of my buddies passing through and everything like that.
But it hits home for me more because now when I see that our service not that it didn't bother me prior, but it kind of hits home a little more when you hear of service members dying in the line of duty, especially frivolously in some cases. And I'm just like, man, those are my friends. Like it's harder for me now because I know active military and I see day to day what I'm not there, but I watch and I see how hard it is at times and what is expected of some of the people serving. And I think it's a thankless job is what I'm trying to say. I mean, you guys at the drop of the hat can be called wherever God knows, in the world. And you're told your orders and you just have to go and do it. Like, it doesn't matter what the purpose is, what the motive behind it is. You're our defense, and when they ask you to hit the ground running, you guys are just expected to say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. And I think that there's a deep respect, at least from my standpoint, in that, because I just think there aren't a lot of people that are willing to do that. So
thank you so much for that. And I have definitely noticed that in places that I've been that are not super, I guess, government or military forward, that a lot of times people will say like, hey, like, not my monkeys, not my circus, right? Like a lot of things that have to do with politics or with the government or with the military or world events or anything like that, they're like, well, that's not really my problem. And I think that people forget sometimes that you do have friends, you do have family members and everything like that are going through this. And I think that that's super helpful, at least where I'm at in my career and with the people that I know and work with right now, is that like, if we do not have a sense of community in the community where we're stationed, where we work, where we live and everything like that, that at least we know that within our organization, we have community. We have people to our left and our right that we can lean on and confide in and trust, to be there for us when we're going through it. And a lot of times we joke around and saying like, hey, like, embrace the suck, or like, all of us are going through it. So it really can't be that bad. And it is tough sometimes, but it's nice to know, I guess, that you've got people kind of silently rooting for you.
Sure.
Because it's definitely not something that you hear every day.
No, and like I said, I think in an area where there's so many, it becomes desensitized, and you forget to. I sure have. I mean, my gosh, if I wanted to spend my day thanking people for their service, I would just never come home because it's all you run into. You know what I mean?
For sure, especially in this area.
Right. So coming from a place where, you don't see service members very often. So automatically, if you're in the airport or whatever, you go up and go, hey, just want you to know I appreciate your service. Here, you don't hear that very much because everyone's pretty much serving. So
I think I kind of have a little bit of a different perspective when it comes to that as well, just from my side, right? Like, you've got people that have served and have been many places, some places that are not super forward and super accepting of us, and some places that are like really, really proud to have us there and happy to have us around and stuff like that. That, like, I think even like there's been less people, traveling in at airports in their uniform, going home and surprising their families in their uniform and a lot of stuff, because I think that they get a little embarrassed sometimes because you've got your friends being like, oh, like, you think you're special and all of that, that you kind of just want to just strip away essentially.
Sure.
From that entire person that you are while you're at work, so that you can appreciate your friendships and your family outside of that, because like you're living this day to day, right? And you don't get a lot of time for yourself. You don't get a lot of time to become who you want to be as a person, because you have to be who they want you to be as a person. And so I guess maybe that's where I'm just not so, I'd say, even like enthusiastic about talking about my job all of the time
Sure.
is because that's my job. I guess I don't have a lot of experience outside of this either. I've worked 2 jobs. I was in a grocery store. I was at an assisted living facility. So I don't have a lot of experience outside of this. But, say you are in the customer service industry or something like that, or say you're a police officer or a restaurant worker with a uniform or a stripper even, right? You're going to come home, you're going to deload, you're going to take a shower, take all of that out and just kind of relax and kind of like try to get rid of that, because at the end of the day, that is just solely what makes you money. And there's a lot of things in your life that mean a lot more, in my opinion, than just making you money and your job.
Oh, that's a very unique perspective. How old are you?
26.
See, that blows my mind. Like maybe you credit the military for that exponential growth for someone your age, but I mean, you carry yourself so much higher. You don't look 50, but you're like a 50-year-old in a 26-year-old's body. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Got that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, is you're sharp. And it's cool to have a conversation with someone that's knowledgeable and is articulate, that can have these discussions, because I don't think it's very common for somebody your age. Just saying. I got a quick question. Did you have family members previously that were in the military?
None for my immediate family.
So
no.
you're the first to serve in your family?
I am, I believe, on, my biological mother's side of the family. I think my great grandfather was in the military, and that's pretty much it. I've got extended family members from my stepmother's side of the family that have served in the military. I'm not exactly sure of how long that they did, but
Sure.
No, nobody really in my family that I'd say that I was super close to.
So what finally drove you to that decision that, oh yeah, I want to be in the military?
This may sound crazy, but at a younger age, we were raised on welfare, so we got government assistance. There was a lot of stuff that I feel like the government, whether it be state or federal, that has done for me in supporting me as a child into adulthood, that I honestly, when I joined the military, I thought that it was like my civil duty to give back essentially to what I thought was an amazing country that had all of these great opportunities and great assistances for people that needed it, And so initially I was just like, hey, I'm going to just do my time and, get out and say that I returned the favor essentially. But I've come to enjoy what I do. It was kind of just.
But you didn't set out when you joined to specifically work on helicopters, did you?
No.
So tell me, obviously I don't know because I've never joined. So when you join the military, how is it decided what field you're going to go into?
So you essentially take a test, and it covers everything from shapes to math to English to mechanical skills to like general knowledge, your knowledge about communication, your knowledge about math, science, just how everything works, personality tests and everything like that. And they take this data and essentially give you a score. And your score, I think it ranges from, I want to say like 30 to 90 something, maybe 100. I'm not exactly sure. But within that score, they break it down even further into different categories, essentially, right? Like if you score higher in one of these fields, you may be better suited to do this, or you may be better suited to that. However, there are some things that are a little bit more weighted than other things, that if you score high in those, you can pretty much do anything that you want. And you've got people that have, jobs in intelligence, jobs in radio communications, jobs in human resources and everything like that, that may even score lower than the people that don't really have as what some people would consider intellectually challenging jobs, like, oh, I'm going to sound really bad for saying this, but a lot of people, especially in the military, just because we know, so generally the infantry, right? Everybody thinks that like, oh, they just want to go and beat people and shoot people and fight and work out and, eat a bunch and cuss a lot and all of that stuff. But statistically, the infantry actually scores a lot higher on these exams when joining the military, but their intentions behind joining was never to get like the, top secret, working for the FBI type jobs. They just really, truly do just want to serve their country. And so that's why they choose these, other jobs. So essentially, like, you score a certain amount and they give you options, right? So one, it's options based off of your score, right? Like, hey, this is what you're qualified for. Like, I'm sorry, if you don't score high, you're not really qualified for some of the jobs that I think would challenge a lot of people just based off of like their general knowledge, right? Like some things may be a little bit ahead of you and you can work towards that maybe one day, but these are the things that we can offer you. But I think it's also based off of what they say is just like the needs, right? So, I may come into the military or I may be interested in coming into the military in November and everything is all good. These are all of the things that are presented to me. And then all of a sudden, some crazy world event happens or there's a natural disaster here in our country. And all of a sudden there is a need for other types of people in the military. And so they're like, hey, like, this is what we have to offer. And you pretty much have your pick. I definitely can say that a lot of people are rushed into choosing things because they're like, hey, these are your options. This is what you have available based off your scores, right? And based off of our needs. And I don't think a lot of people take enough time to sit back and say, hey, you know what? I am under no obligation to say yes,
right,
until I sign this contract with you. So I wouldn't say that there's a bunch of people that settle necessarily. In my case, I did. This was my second best option, in my opinion. I was offered a job as a pilot in two separate branches. And I want to say this is in December. And I'm super excited. I quit college. I'm like, this is going to be my thing. I'm going to join the military. This is forward motion for me. And all of a sudden it came to a halt because, somebody's state, and there's a difference between like state jobs, federal jobs, and everything like that. Some states pay for certain people to have certain jobs because that is what that state specifically needs. And so they're like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry you lost out on this opportunity because their state is going to pay a hell of a lot more for them to go through this training.
Sure.
Than the federal government is because, to the U.S. government or the federal government as a whole, like, you're a dime a dozen. So unfortunately, I lost out on that specific opportunity and they said, hey, you can still do this. You just need to wait 5 months. And I was like, well, shit, I've already quit college. I've already quit my job. Like, I kind of need to get the ball rolling because I didn't really have a lot of options. And I understand that some people do, you never really know the reasons behind people making moves like that until you get to know them and start talking to them about it. And I just didn't want to wait. And, so I had conversations with other people that I knew had, prior service in the military, some people that have experienced different types of jobs, some people that have reclassified into different jobs. And I heard like, hey, being a helicopter mechanic is pretty badass, right? So if they offer you that, you should probably take that. And, it came up and I just remember being so, I guess, like naive essentially about what I could have expected in this job. You know, I have somebody that was interested in that job during their service, and they're like, yeah, like it's going to be so cool. You're going to go and shoot guns out of helicopters and you're going to fly around all over the place and everything. Little did I know that I was just going to be a helicopter mechanic, you know? So I'm embarrassing myself during basic training being like, oh, well, I'm a crew chief, right? I didn't even know what the hell that meant. Didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know that that was a, you know, rite of passage. I didn't know that that was additional training that you had to go through. I didn't know that you had to be in a specific unit to be able to do that. I was just like, yeah, like my boyfriend said that I was just going to be cool and I'm a crew chief, right? No, it was so silly. But I'm definitely glad that I was able to, you know, earn that role eventually and be like, yeah, well, I didn't know what I was talking about back then, but look at me now. Right. And so no, like it was not my first choice. But it was the best choice, I guess, at the time.
I don't think it would serve the conversation well going into the political side. So this isn't politically driven. It's a genuine question that I've wanted to ask on air. When tragedies happen, like when we pulled out of Afghanistan and we lose 15 Marines, which my personal opinion is it wasn't needed. Do you guys as a group, do you guys talk about that? Does that affect you guys?
100%. We actually had months worth of dialogue within our, you know, small groups, larger groups, you know, asking a lot of opinions and giving a lot of support. You know, you've got a lot of people that have served prior to 9/11 that are still potentially serving. Granted, they're way up there, you know, these are not people that you interact with on a daily basis. And a lot of people who purposefully have served since then, you know, because they thought that, you know, this is something that's super important. And again, not going too much into the politics, I think a lot of the big question that we've had, I guess, within our ranks is overspending 20 years in Afghanistan, like, and pulling out like that, like, was it all for nothing? Right? You know, countless lives lost, you know, the amount of money that was spent, the amount of training that was put into it, the amount of media coverage that there was, you know, the growth, I guess, for us as a military and as a country and everything like that, the support that we have given to other countries since then. A lot of people, you could assume, would think that, like, man, all of those wasted resources, you know, whether it be like time or money or, you know, lives. But I think from my conversations that I've had with a lot of people is that we are not thinking of it as a waste, you know, or something so tragic. Yes, I think that, you know, it could have maybe been done more gracefully, but also, you know, I'm not a person in a position to make those calls. You know, I can have an opinion about it, sure, but my opinion's just the same as anybody else's. It's mine. And, you know, it may not have a huge impact and it may not reach a lot of people. But I know I'm not the only one with this opinion. But I think the general consensus that I can say that I've drawn from people that I've spoken to, that I've been there, you know, since the early 2000s, since this was a huge thing, you know, and I've never had a combat deployment myself. So I seek this type of, I guess, perspective on it, is that it was not a waste because, you know, we also spent 20 years giving the population in Afghanistan, you know, the sense of safety. You know, the sense of assurance that, you know, if something bad starts happening to them, that we are going to be there to help them and support them. You know, it was 20 years, people being born after that and becoming adults, being able to live during a time where they did not have to worry as much as they had previously, right? And we offered that to them. And that's something that we provided to them for so long. And yes, it is tragic that, you know, that's suddenly became no longer available because, you know, that was their norm, you know, from childhood all the way through adulthood. That was their norm. Or even people that have lived through tragedy previously and got to experience, you know, tranquility for a short 20-year period of time and then, you know, be subjected to the afterwards. God, it's awful. But, you know, I don't think that it was for nothing. I don't think that it was time wasted. I think that there was a lot of things that the entire world learned during that time. So I think at the end of the day that it was still beneficial, you know, and like I said, my opinion on whether or not we could have, you know, given them a heads up or something, you know, at the end of the day, could that really change anything? You know, when you've got a majority of people who are wrongdoers who would take any opportunity to do wrong, whether they know that they're going to be given the opportunity 5 years from now or tomorrow or whatever, whenever they are presented a chance, they're going to do it. You know, so I at this point, I guess I just don't think that it would have made such a huge difference in how long it took us.
Sure.
Versus, I guess, the extremeness of what happened afterwards. You know, it's almost like night and day, you know, that we spent so long trying to prevent a lot of this stuff from happening. And then suddenly overnight, you know, it's happening again. And it's not like we can just say like, oops, you know, we messed up. Let's just go back, you know? Yeah. And as you've seen, and it's, I don't know how, you know, dark we're getting here, but, you know, you had people who were clinging to airplanes, you know, just trying to get out. And we were trying to help as many people out as we possibly could, because what they thought that they would have experienced there without us being there is far worse than, you know, falling out of the air.
Sure.
You know, and that's so awful, and it's tragic, and it's saddening and hurtful to so many people that have lived through this, you know, and have been alive during this time. But I guess there's just a lot more exposure now because of social media and everything, because this is not the first time that crazy things have happened in countries across the entire globe, you know, where it's like it's a war, you know, one day, and then all of a sudden we figure out like, hey, you know, we can make this work, you know, we can have like a peace treaty, or we can calm down for a little bit, enough for one of us at least to get a leg up, or one of us to rebuild ourselves, or one of us to have enough resources to support the people and everything like that. It's just, you know, I feel like in history, it's not been, you know, it's not been televised. It's not been shown over social media. It's not been over the radio and everything like that. All of these technological
yeah.
Advances and, God, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, people,
availability that we have, you know,
because
people just didn't have
is,
access
right
to news. And it almost seems like, you know, this is not the first time that something like this has happened. Maybe not to this scale, maybe not to our knowledge to this scale, you know, because before Google archives, you know, you had written book, you had shit carved into rocks,
right?
You know, so I mean, I guess it's hard to say as even just a person, right, whether or not I think, you know, this was a good or a bad thing. I think it was just, you know, a thing that happened, and I can empathize with the people that are going through it. I can, you know, sympathize with a lot of, you know, people seeking support and seeking, I guess validation towards how they're feeling about the situation and everything like that. However, I also have a different perspective because of my role in our society, you know, that I am military. And at the end of the day, like you said, like sometimes we kind of just have to be like, hey, you know, I was told to go and do this, so I'm going to go and do this. You know, we may not agree, and you've got a bunch of people that disagree, and, you know, make it well known that they disagree. But at the end of the day, it is not somebody on my, I guess, echelon of opinion that matters, to say anything. Really.
Well, and I mean, essentially, I would assume when you sign up, you're forfeiting your right to an opinion, really. Right? I mean, they at that point they own you, and you're just expected to do whatever job they want you to do.
Yes and no. I used to think about that a lot, right? I was like, hey, you know what? This is my job. I'm going to do what I'm told. But as I have spent a little more time in the military, and, I may catch shit for this later, but like I mentioned previously, we're still people. We're not machines. We are not made to be programmed.
Right.
To think or feel a certain way. Our bodies, our brains are going to think or feel a certain way just because that's the way that everything works, like you can't control those things. And so, a lot of people tend to, I think early on in their careers, be a little more hesitant about sharing their feelings, sharing their emotions, sharing their thoughts, bringing up ideas. But, I encourage even my juniors, like, hey, like, if you have an idea, like please bring that forward so we can maybe incorporate it in our day-to-day operations. So we can, acknowledge that you may have a different perspective that may help us. I think that it is a lot more progressive than it ever has been, with a lot of like people being able to share their opinions and saying like, I think this is right. I think this is wrong. Or maybe even thinking that, hey, I am not always going to be the smartest or the most expert at the thing that I'm thinking or the thing that I'm doing, even in the military when you have a specific job. And so now I think that I've been able to be more comfortable in sharing my opinions with stuff when I'm just like, hey, you know what? This kind of sounds dumb, right? And seeking the answers from a lot of people from higher up, just looking for answers and being like, hey, like, why are we doing this? And not settling for, well, because we told you so.
Do you feel like you're supported in that theology though? Like, do you feel like that your concerns or your opinions at the end of the day really matter?
For me personally, yes, I do. But I think that it just depends on your role, right? So me, in my role specifically, I have other people that I have to look out for. Right. And it's not just, a large group of people that I have to make sure like nobody dies. Right. Like, sure, that's a huge responsibility, but I have people, that have personal lives, people that have families, people that have financial issues, people that have, hormones, people, from
Right.
all different walks of lives that experience life differently. And I have to be receptive to how they deal with things day to day while still trying to like get the job done, essentially. Right. And so I want most people that I work with to know like, hey, like, I hear you, and I'm here for you, but still kind of keep it like professional in the sense it's like, yes, I do still have to remind you like, yes, this is a profession. Yes, this is our job and everything like that. But like, I get it. Like, if you are feeling off or if you disagree with this, because like, I don't believe in not asking questions.
Sure.
Right? Like, if you're not curious about what you're doing or why you're doing it, like I wouldn't be okay with doing it. And at the end of the day, this may have happened way back when, but if I share my opinion with you, so long as I am being respectful or coming from a good place and like truly wanting to gain knowledge or truly wanting to gain perspective or find out a reason why without, the nagging, like why, I'm not going to get beat up for it.
Right.
There's not going to be rocks thrown at me for asking questions. So at the end of the day, I'm still going to, I guess, try to answer questions at least for myself, right? Like if nobody else understands why I'm doing this, or if nobody else understands why they're doing something, like at least I kind of have a little bit of a picture because I asked the questions, because, you've got to be skeptical. Because it's been repeated, I guess, throughout the years, is that like not everybody, just because you are in a place of power, or just because you are in a management position or in somewhere where you have control. Like, not everybody is going to have the best intentions, right? And so I think at some point, yes, you do have to say, like, yes, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. But at some point, you also have the opportunity, I guess, to defend your like moral compass or your values or your knowledge, even like to say, hey, I don't think this is right, and they, I'd say, encourage that a lot more now than they did when I first joined. But at the same time, we still see people struggling to bring their opinions forward and bring their thoughts forwards and bring their questions forwards without the feeling of like being reprimanded after, because you do have a lot of traditional or molded people to feel and think a certain way after being in for so long that they don't like being questioned. They don't like being challenged. And I don't know if it's like a macho thing or what. And I can't even say it's a macho thing. It's men and women that have a little bit more experience that like, it's, I guess nobody really wants to feel second guessed, whether you are at, my level or you're the freaking president. You want to think that like, hey, I'm going to make these decisions and I'm supposed to have all of these supporters and everything like that. But I think it takes a lot of maturity even, or common sense to know that not everybody's going to think like you.
Sure. There's going to be variation in everything.
Right.
How did you, what's the consensus on the vaccine mandate? Because you talk about, you guys are out there fighting for our freedoms and yours as well. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you have to do this. And it's not we're not asking, we're telling. How did that go over?
So I have to be honest, at some point I had to relate this to having a dog or a friend or something, and I'm going to be the dog and the friend in this situation, right? So you've got a dog that you want to do tricks for you, right? So you start to, have you ever heard of Pavlov? The Pavlovian, not syndrome. There was this scientist or philosopher or somebody named Pavlov, that started, it was an experiment with rats, right? Where if the rats started to do the right things and the things that you wanted to do for them, you'd give them like a little piece of cheese or a little treat or something like that, right? Until they can like navigate things. And they do this a lot with like dog training, where, you want your dog to sit. So you tell them to sit. And if they do, you give them a treat, but you also associate that with like a click, right? On their little counter thing. You give them dual sensory stimulation, essentially, right? Where you're like, all right, this is awesome. And you get something that you like and you give them a little click, right? And eventually they associate the good thing, the treat, with the click that they're hearing, right? And, you can apply this even to relationships with people or friendships or your job or anything like that. And in this case, we're talking about your job where, you do small things, right? You do as you're told and you get a little click, right? You're like, oh, well, hey guys, you worked so hard this week and we really appreciate your effort. Thank you so much. And you don't hear that a lot, especially from your leaders or from the other people that you work with. So you're like, hell yeah, that felt good. That feels nice to be appreciated, so that's my click, right? But you're also getting the treat, right? And maybe I'm humble in saying this, but my treat is like, I'm on salary. I know I'm going to get a paycheck a couple of weeks from now unless I truly fuck up.
Right.
I get to travel all over the place. I get to meet a bunch of people that I never would have met, I'm sure, if I had never joined the military. I get to experience new things. I get to learn a bunch of just stuff that like the general population does not get to know. And those are my treats. And then, they give you the click saying, hey, you can stay in this job, click. You can get praise by getting an award for something that you've done. Click, right? But you're doing the same thing over and over, and you're starting to hear this click, and all of a sudden they start taking away the treats. But you were still going to perform. You know, the dog is still going to sit without the treat. He's still going to sit with just the click because he associates that with something positive, with a treat or with praise or with a belly rub or something like that. And all of these little, you know, small belly rubs essentially from being able to be a part of this organization, because there are a lot of good things that happen with it. And so I guess like that's how I felt with getting the vaccine, right? Where initially they were like, hey, you know, we think it's important for everybody to wear a mask. So everybody's going to wear a mask. And all of us are so used to just hearing that click where we're like, okay, if we wear the mask, something good might happen, right? If we wear the mask, we may not have to 6 months, you know, not thinking about science or viruses or however pandemics actually work. We're like, you know what? We're going to do what we're told, because every time we do what we're told, we get a treat, or we get just the click, the just, you know, audible sound saying, hey, you did a great job by doing what you're told, right? So it started with the mask, and then it's like, hey, like, we're going to offer the vaccine for anybody that wants it, right? And the people that wanted it got it, and I think that they thought that they were going to get some type of click or treat or something like that, and it never happened. However, the people that didn't get it are the beaten puppies.
Right.
You know what I mean? Saying like, oh, well, are you sure that you've got, you know, the brains or the capacity or knowledge or research or anything to validate you not wanting to get it, right?
Did that cause contention within the ranks?
No, nobody gives a shit. Like, okay, so in my opinion, right? So say I've got like everybody in my, you know, everybody that I work with wants to get vaccinated. They all get vaccinated, right? I'm the only one that doesn't. Nobody that has gotten it has said, oh, well, like, look at that leper for not getting the COVID vaccination, you know, because everybody's got their reason. And at the end of the day, you may be family in some aspects because like you're kind of all we have sometimes, but you're my coworker. And so if you worked at like a grocery store or a gym or at the post office or something like that, like you see these people all the time, but they've got lives outside. Like what you do is none of my business, and I can give a shit less, you know, because I still have my life outside of this. This is why I think it's important that I got it. And it's not my business why you did or didn't. Right. And I think that that's easier in the military. Right.
Absolutely.
Than it is outside, because I've seen so much stuff, you know, social media and everything like that. And even within my own family, right? I've got some people that I've chosen to be vaccinated, some people that I've chosen not to be vaccinated, right? In the military specifically, I would say, yes, it was incentivized, right? If you got the vaccination, you got the treat. You got to leave, you got to go off base, you got to not wear your mask, you got to do all this stuff. Whereas if you didn't, you know, you were being not officially reprimanded so far.
From the civilian side of things, I mean, we've just been hammered. I mean, we've even had the president himself basically say that if you're not vaccinated, you're the one killing people.
Right.
You know, that kind of rhetoric doesn't help. It doesn't make you want to go to the pharmacy and get the vaccine when that's how you're being treated. Hollywood obviously has pitched into that as well, and that's the thing that's really crappy. Is at the end of the day, right or wrong, I feel like it should still be a choice.
100%. I truly believe in the whole like bodily autonomy and everything like that, right? Like you should choose what goes into your body.
But you're in a different situation. Like joining the military is like having a Costco membership, for instance. Like
Sure.
when you go to Walmart and you're leaving, they do their little we're going to accost you. We want to see your receipt and see that you've proven that. Well, you don't have to stop for them. You can walk right out. There's nothing that they can do. But Costco, when you sign up for that membership, that is in their bylaws. They're like, well, yeah, you can become a member, but this is what you're going to be subjected to. When you go through, you are required to show your proof of purchase at the door, and they are going to look over your receipt and make sure that you're not stealing anything. So from the military standpoint, I can see that. And you signed a contract with the military, you've got to travel to other countries.
Right.
You're kind of between a rock and a hard place. But on the civilian side, you know, that narrative is still being pushed. No, you have to have this done, or we're not going to let you fly on airplanes. We're not going to let you go to NBA games. That is the part that I felt was kind of like, wow, this is
I think
weird.
that that's super unique and fortunate to being in the military, is that like I said, nothing bad, I would say, career-wise has happened to anybody that has chosen not to. But it is also unique in the fact that like this isn't something that we've had to deal with as a society, as an organization, as a membership even.
Seeing the press
that
comes out and says, oh yeah, a third of the military have been dishonorably discharged.
Well, I mean, there's
for
a
not...
billboard down the street that says, you know, how many people in Kansas do you think have the vaccination? You think, I don't know, 300,000. They're like, oh, well, actually, it's 1.7 million. And you start to question, like, damn, are there even 1.7 million people
right.
in Kansas? Right. So, you know, people are going to say what they're going to say on the media and on Facebook and in the news and everything like that. And really, like, the only person that can be unbiased towards what you believe and what you see and everything like that and how you perceive things is yourself.
Right.
Right. And I think that we have been fortunate enough to where there has not been actually any what I would consider bad things happening to those members of the military that have chosen not to get it.
Sure. So if you were sheltered from social media and didn't know who the president of the United States was, is there much change procedurally going from like Trump to a Biden administration?
At the end of the day, the president doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, like, that's kind of my boss.
Right.
And I'm going to do what I'm told if I
do.
want to, you know, maintain my job.
Sure. Okay.
So in some ways, yes, I do think that it matters a little bit on like who's president, just like based on like the majority's views and everything like that, what they might do, but you don't know what people might do. You know, you kind of just take it day by day. But you know, when you sign up, that there's a chance that things can go south.
Sure.
And you still have to make that sacrifice. You still have to make that choice and say, hey, I know that this could be great. It could be awful, but I'm willing to take that chance. You know, regardless of the cards that are played in front of you, you're still playing the game.
Sure.
Not that it's a game, but you know, you're in it for as long as you signed up for.
And you've obviously enjoyed the journey. I mean, you've had an opportunity to opt out of your contract already, right? And you've extended.
I did.
And you obviously feel awesome about that.
Yes. Yeah,
That's
I
cool.
don't regret it at all. I've had, you know, a lot of good times. I've had a lot of bad times. I've met a lot of great people. You know, some people that I still consider some of my best friends. You
That's
know,
nice of you to say.
Especially you, Josh. Some people that I consider really close, and I just think that it's based on a lot of like your perspective, like, you know, and being an optimist versus a pessimist, and trying to learn lessons from the cards that you're dealt, and trying to gain knowledge and gain experience and everything like that. Like I feel like I'm not so much a doer because I know how to do. I am a learner, and I'm a doer because I know how to learn from what I'm doing.
But you do sacrifice a lot though. I mean, yes, you enjoy your job, and that's amazing, and you're very positive about your outlook on that. But relationship-wise, family-wise, like there's a lot of things that you have to give up being in the service that you don't normally have with a civilian job.
Right.
How has that been? I haven't even asked you. Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a husband?
No.
No?
I'm divorced.
You're divorced.
I'm divorced. And I have chosen to briefly date somebody after this, and this is years ago that I did get divorced. But I'd say family is a lot bigger than just your spouse or your immediate family. You know, family is a lot about the people that you hold dear to you. And it wasn't until over 6 years of my service obligation that I truly felt homesick, where I started to question, hey, am I making the right choice? You know, I've already gone past my first contract. You know, I've only gone home a couple times, but I was taking advantage of the opportunity to travel and meet new people and go new places. And I was like, well, what the hell does home have to offer for me?
Were you married? Were you married prior to your service?
No, I wasn't.
So just give me that timeline really quick. So you got married while you were in your service?
I did. I was already at my second duty station, and I met my ex at midget wrestling.
My ex. Why do you think they get titled ex?
I'd say ex as in
that? It kind of gives you a bad, you know what I mean? My ex.
I guess
Doesn't
that's just
sound
like
positive
what
at all.
it doesn't. So my previous relationship, sure, yeah, my ex-wife. I don't know where X came from. That's just what I use.
No, it's just funny. Every time I hear X, it's like, oh, it's just
right. It's not a huge red X or red flag.
Is it a
or
capital
anything.
X?
No, it's not. It's just that's like the terminology that we were gifted to use for those types of situation. And you know, I'm grateful to have experienced it. It was some of the best and worst times, I'd say, of my life.
But did the military affect that relationship?
Sure, 100%.
And that's what I'm saying.
100%.
So do you think if you would have been in that relationship outside of the military, would it have been a little easier?
It's hard to say.
Okay.
It's hard to say. And I maybe have a little bit of a weird perspective on this, just, you know, being a woman in the military, a female, as a lot of people, and I'd say, like, as a female service member, that a lot of times the word female gets such a negative connotation. You know, it's like, you know, female fitness standards, female colleagues, female this, female that, blah blah blah, all of that shit. So I think that people that had been in relationships or marriages or anything prior to their service, you know, more power to them if they can go through all of the stuff that people have to go through. And I was presented this ideal at one point that you have to treat your relationships the way that you would treat something that you think is valuable, right? Like some tangible thing that you think is valuable. Say you've got a piggy bank. Right. And you love this piggy bank and you are saving up for something, and relationship wise, that something is a, you know, retirement, maybe a life in the future where you can sit there and watch your children grow up and watch your grandchildren grow up and say, hey, I've done something in my life. You know, you are constantly contributing to this piggy bank of life. Right. And you put your money in, you know, you're like, oh, I was successful at this, so I'm going to throw a quarter in, I'm going to throw $1 in, or every time I say I love you to my spouse, I'm going to throw $5 in. You know, you have to continuously put money or invest into your love bank of whatever that is, whether it's your job or your relationships or your friendships and everything like that. And